99% of the people watching this right now own at least one of the 5 plants on this list, and one of them can put a dog into liver failure before you ever notice he's sick. Not vomiting, not whining, nothing. He eats normal, plays normal, and a full day later you're standing in an emergency room wondering how you missed it. That's the part almost nobody expects. Most people picture plant poisoning as instant, foam at the mouth, a mad dash to the car within the hour. So before we even get to plant number 1, there's a question worth sitting with for a second. What if the most dangerous one on this list doesn't look dangerous at all, not for a full day? Keep that in your head because it changes everything about how you're going to watch the rest of this. If you've ever caught your dog chewing on a houseplant and just shrugged it off because he seemed fine afterward, you're not careless. You're just like almost everyone else. Garden centers don't put toxicity warnings anywhere near the pretty potted plant by the register, and nobody hands new dog owners a list of what's actually sitting in their own living room. The fact that you're here, watching this instead of shrugging it off again, already puts you ahead of most people with a dog and a houseplant. And here's the myth that needs to go first, because it's the one that gets dogs into real trouble. People assume toxic means immediate. It doesn't, not always. Some plants hurt a dog the second he bites down, pure physical irritation, done in seconds. Others work like standing too long in the sun. No pain at first, damage building quietly underneath while the dog seems completely fine. That second kind is the one that fools everybody, because there's no moment that tells you to be worried. There's just a normal evening, and then there isn't. Underneath all 5 of these plants, there are really only 3 ways a dog gets hurt. And knowing which one you're dealing with tells you how fast you need to move. One path is straight organ damage. A compound gets absorbed into the blood and slowly overwhelms an organ, usually the liver, the way a filter clogs a little more every hour instead of breaking all at once. The second path is cardiac. A plant compound interferes with the electrical signal that keeps a heartbeat steady, like a metronome that starts skipping. The third path doesn't even need to be absorbed. It just physically damages tissue on contact, the moment a tooth presses into it. Keep those 3 in mind: organ, heart, contact, because every plant on this list falls into one of them. Before the list starts, it helps to know what normal even looks like, because not every chewed leaf is a crisis. A dog mouthing a plant out of boredom, taking one curious nibble and walking away, isn't automatically an emergency, and treating every leaf on the floor like a 5-alarm fire isn't the goal here. What separates ordinary curiosity from a real ingestion is the pattern afterward. Drooling that starts suddenly and won't stop, or pawing at the mouth, points towards something that physically hurt on contact. Vomiting or diarrhea within a couple hours points towards stomach irritation. And quiet, off behavior that shows up a day later, with no obvious trigger that morning, is the pattern that deserves the most attention, because that's usually the slow kind of damage working underneath. The first one on the list is also the most misunderstood, and that's exactly why it goes first. True lilies, and daylilies too, have a reputation as one of the most dangerous plants a pet can eat, and that reputation is earned, just not quite the way most people think. In cats, lily ingestion is genuinely one of the scariest plant exposures out there, capable of shutting down the kidneys from a surprisingly small amount. In dogs, that specific kidney failure isn't the expected outcome. What lilies tend to cause in a dog is real stomach upset, vomiting, drooling, diarrhea that can be uncomfortable and does warrant a call to your vet. But it's a different picture than what happens to a cat. Here's why that distinction actually matters in real life, though. If there's a cat anywhere in the house, a lily still has no safe place to exist, because what's manageable for your dog could be a genuine emergency for the cat sniffing the same vase. Either way, any dog that's chewed on a lily gets a call to your veterinarian or ASPCA Animal Poison Control, not a wait and see. If you noticed your dog sniffing around a plant like that recently, or you're just realizing your own home has one, drop a comment with where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if this kind of thing is useful to you, no pressure, and a like helps this reach the next owner who has no idea what's on their own windowsill. That gap between what a lily does to a cat and what it tends to do to a dog is worth remembering on its own too. Dogs and cats don't break down plant compounds the same way. Their liver and kidney enzymes handle certain toxins differently, which is part of why one warning label on a plant tag can be true for one animal in the house and misleading for the other. It's also exactly why a household with both a dog and a cat has to treat the stricter warning as the one that counts for everybody under that roof. Here's the part most people miss, though. One plant or one sign rarely tells the whole story on its own. What you're noticing in a dog, a chewed leaf, a habit of digging in the yard, a tendency to mouth things he shouldn't, usually travels with a few other small things in his day that only start to make sense once you see them together as one picture. If your head's spinning a little with everything to keep an eye on in a house with a dog, that's normal, and it's actually the exact trap. Knowing 10 things to watch for is fairly useless if you don't know which one matters for your dog tonight. That's why we put together a free 2-minute quiz. It takes your dog's fuller picture, his habits, his home, what he tends to get into, and narrows it down to the one place to start. It won't treat or reverse a plant poisoning. That part only ever goes through your vet or ASPCA Animal Poison Control. This is simply for organizing everything else once the emergency part, if there is one, is already handled. The link's in the pinned comment or scan the QR code on the screen. Finish this video first though, because the biggest piece, the plant most likely to actually hurt a dog, is still ahead. The next one isn't sitting on a windowsill. It's outside, in the yard, in a hedge, sometimes handed to someone as a flowering gift in a pot. And it's a plant most people would never think to fence off from a curious nose. Azalea and its close relative rhododendron both carry a compound called a glycoside, and that's the piece that interferes with a dog's heartbeat, not just the stomach. A dog who chews on a few leaves usually starts with drooling, vomiting, and diarrhea within a few hours, which already sounds unpleasant enough on its own. But eat a larger amount and that glycoside can start affecting heart rhythm and blood pressure too, which tends to look like sudden weakness or an unsteady, wobbly walk, not just an upset stomach. What makes Azalea trickier than it looks is that the dose response isn't predictable from the outside. You can't eyeball how many leaves is too many for your specific dog, which is exactly why even a handful of chewed leaves earns a same-day call, not a shrug. There's one more thing hiding in that same yard, though, and it's not sitting above ground where you'd notice it. The danger with tulips and other spring bulbs like daffodil and hyacinth isn't really the flower, it's underground. The bulb itself carries far more of the irritant compound than the petals or the leaves ever do, which means a dog who nibbles a cut tulip in a vase is in a very different situation than a dog who's been digging in a flower bed and comes up with a mouthful of bulb. Smaller amounts, a petal, a leaf, tend to cause drooling, stomach upset, and a dog going off his food for a bit. Larger amounts, especially actual bulb material, can push those symptoms further and are worth treating as more serious. If your dog is a digger and you've got tulips or daffodils planted anywhere in reach, that's the exact combination worth a second look this week, because the plant itself looks harmless right up until the part that isn't gets pulled up. And this is the season it usually happens, right around when bulbs get planted or dug up and moved. Bags of them sitting open in a garage or a garden bed for an afternoon while nobody's watching the dog closely. One quick note on lily and tulip type upset before we keep moving. If a dog's stomach settles within several hours after a vet has already weighed in, that's the expected pattern for the milder end of these two. If vomiting or loose stool is still going a day later, or he stops drinking water, that stops being a waited out situation and becomes a same-day recheck. Not a new emergency exactly, just a sign the first plan needs adjusting. We're 2 plants past the halfway mark of this list, and I want to pause on something that happened to a real dog, because it's the clearest picture of why the last 2 plants on this list matter more than people assume. Picture a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, a 3-year-old named Bo, who spent an ordinary afternoon in a backyard that happened to have a sago palm, kept mostly because it looked tropical against the fence. That evening, Bo was completely normal, ate his dinner, played, nothing to see. It wasn't until the next afternoon that he stopped eating and went quiet in a way that wasn't like him. By the time anyone connected it back to the plant, his liver values were already climbing, and it took an extended stretch of veterinary care to bring him back around. His family said afterward that the hardest part wasn't the vet visits. It was realizing the plant had been sitting in that corner for 2 years without a single problem, right up until the one day it wasn't fine. Bo was a mid-sized dog, and even he needed more than a day to fully turn the corner. For a smaller breed, the same amount of plant material carries more weight relative to body size, so the margin for weighting is even thinner. For a larger dog, it can take a bigger mouthful to cause the same level of concern, but bigger doesn't mean safe. It just means the timeline to real trouble might stretch a little longer instead of disappearing. That's 4 plants down, and every one of them shares something in common. They all announce themselves fairly quickly, drooling within minutes, and upset stomach within hours. The 5th one doesn't play by that rule at all, and that's exactly why it's the one still ahead. Before we get there, though, there's a plant that reacts the fastest of anything on this list, and it's usually sitting quietly in a low-light corner of the house, the kind of plant people pick specifically because it's hard to kill. Dieffenbachia, sometimes called dumb cane, is packed with microscopic calcium oxalate crystals, and they don't need to be digested to hurt a dog. They do the damage the instant a tooth breaks the leaf. Picture thousands of tiny glass shards sitting inside every stem, invisible until something presses down on them. A dog that bites into Dieffenbachia usually knows something's wrong within seconds. Intense drooling, pawing at the mouth, obvious discomfort trying to swallow. It's rarely a threat to the liver or kidneys the way some of the others are, but a heavy bite can cause enough swelling in the mouth or throat to affect breathing, which is what turns a painful mistake into an urgent one. Any of that, straight to the vet or ASPCA Animal Poison Control, the same day, not tomorrow. That instant reaction is such a strange contrast to how this whole list started, isn't it? A dog bites Dieffenbachia and knows immediately something's wrong, while the plant still ahead can sit in a dog's system for a full day without a single sign. That contrast is exactly the point of this whole list, and it's about to pay off. So here it is. The plant that opened this video, the one that can do real damage without a single obvious sign for a full day, is sago palm, sometimes called cycad or Kunti palm, depending on where you live. Every part of it is toxic, but the seeds are the worst offenders, packed with a toxin called psychocin, and it's genuinely concentrated enough that 1 or 2 seeds can be a real problem for a small dog. Psychocin works exactly like that filter clogging slowly. It overwhelms the liver's ability to clean the blood, not instantly but steadily, over roughly a day to 3 days. That's the timeline that catches people off guard. A dog can eat a seed or 2, seem totally normal that evening, playful even, and only the next day or the day after start showing vomiting, dark or tarry stool, lethargy, or gums that look faintly yellow instead of pink. By the time those signs show up, the damage has already been building quietly the whole time, which is why any known or even suspected sago palm ingestion gets an immediate call to your vet or ASPCA Animal Poison Control, even if your dog looks completely fine standing in front of you right now. Looking fine is exactly what this plant does, right up until it doesn't. Left unaddressed, that liver stress can progress toward outright liver failure, and sago palm carries one of the higher mortality rates of any common plant exposure in dogs, even with treatment, which is the one number on this whole list worth actually remembering. For every plant we've covered, the actual protocol is the same, and it's worth saying plainly one more time. If you catch the moment it happens, gently remove any plant material still in the mouth if it's safe to do so. Take note of which plant it was and roughly how much, and call your vet or ASPCA Animal Poison Control right away instead of waiting to see how he acts, because sago palm and tulip bulbs especially can look completely uneventful for hours. Don't try to make him vomit at home. Some situations make that more dangerous than helpful, and it's genuinely a call for the vet or the poison control line to make based on the plant and the timing, not a home decision. And while we're on the subject, the same instinct applies to garlic, onion, grapes and raisins, xylitol, sometimes labeled birch sugar, cooked bones, concentrated essential oils, and chocolate. None of those get a home remedy either. They get a phone call. Sago palm damage rarely stays contained to just the liver either. In more serious cases, it can affect blood clotting and cause fluid to build up in the abdomen, simply because the liver supports so many other systems at once, and knocking it down tends to ripple outward. That's not meant to scare you, it's meant to explain why this one plant sits at the top of the danger list, while something like a chewed tulip petal sits much lower. One more honest note here, because not every case reads the same way. Some dogs show that first wave of lethargy and bounce back within a day once a vet is involved, and some take longer, and there isn't a way to predict which one your dog will be just from watching him the first evening. That uncertainty is exactly why the call happens before the symptoms do, not after. And a common mistake worth naming because it trips up genuinely attentive owners. Most people check for symptoms once, right after they notice the chewing, and if nothing shows up in the first hour, they stop watching. With a plant like sago palm, that first hour tells you almost nothing. The dog who seems fine at 6 is not automatically the dog who's fine at 6 tomorrow. So that's the 5, lily and daylily, azalea and rhododendron, tulip and its underground bulb, Dieffenbachia with its instant sting, and sago palm, quiet, slow, and the most dangerous of the group. 3 ways they actually hurt a dog underneath all of it: organ damage, heart rhythm, and direct contact. And the honest truth is, most of the danger on this list is invisible until it's already moving. The practical version of this isn't panic. It's a walk through your own home this week, room by room, one area at a time, instead of trying to check everything at once. Because that's the only way this actually gets done, instead of just sitting as a good intention. Living room first, then the yard, then anywhere plants get gifted or dropped off without much thought. A windowsill herb garden, a bouquet someone brought over. And once a plant is identified as one of these 5, the fix isn't always throwing it out, moving it out of reach, up on a shelf, behind a baby gate, or fencing off a section of yard keeps the plant and keeps the dog safe at the same time, which matters if it was a gift or something you've genuinely grown attached to. It's worth saying plainly, plant tags at the store almost never mention any of this. Checklists for new dog owners barely bring up houseplants at all, and that's not something you should have known on your own. Nobody handed you this list until right now. If you want to tell me something useful, drop the number 1 through 5 of the plant on this list you had absolutely no idea was sitting in your own home. I'd genuinely like to know which one surprised the most people. And if this was worth your time, go ahead and subscribe. That free 2-minute quiz is still sitting in the pinned comment and on the QR code whenever you're ready for it. For now, though, maybe go take one more look around that windowsill tonight and give your dog a scratch on the chest, the spot he leans all his weight into, before you do.